This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Beginning today's show is K-State Extension Farm Management Specialist Gregg Ibendahl as he reviews his recent diesel and fertilizer price outlooks for 2024. K-State's Shane Werk and Chris Mullinix continue the show with Jacob Klaudt as they discuss the upcoming Legacy Cattle Sale. They talk about what people can see at the sale and who helps make the day come together. Mike Brouk, K-State Dairy Specialist, finishes today's show by encouraging dairy farmers to begin planning now for the upcoming fly season, which can negatively impact herd health and milk production. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing some price outlooks for 2024. And then to talk about them, we're joined by K-State Extension Farm Management Specialist Gregg Ibendahl. Gregg, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Gregg, first looking at a diesel fuel price outlook for 2024, and what is diesel currently at?
Well, we're probably a little bit higher than I think you would normally think we should be based on what the price of gasoline is. So, a lot of the fuels we can basically go back and tie back to the price of oil. So once we can predict what the oil price is going to be, then we have a good idea of what the fuel price is going to be. Now, here in the U.S., there's kind of a unique situation because I think we're kind of constrained with our capacity for actually producing fuels at the moment with our refinery situation in the U.S. We have a bunch of old refineries. It's really almost next to impossible to get a new refinery built. So we're kind of constrained by what happens in the refinery thing. So whenever there's a breakdown in the refinery system, if some refinery goes offline or something like that, which has happened in the past quite often, that tends to impact fuel prices. And then refiners also have the ability to adjust their mix a little bit between oil and gas. So, they can't change it totally from one to the other, but they do have some flexibility there. So I think we're kind of in a situation right now where and if you go around by a gas station, you'll notice the gap between gasoline and diesel price is probably bigger than what it typically has been in the past. So really, I kind of expect diesel maybe to come down a little bit during the course of the year. Mainly because that gap is a little bit wider than what it has historically been. But if we look at what happened last year, that gap kind of increased again at the end of the year. So really, I kind of expect diesel to come down a little bit in relation to gas and then maybe start going back up if this last year's pattern tends to hold.
And you mentioned oil, so what's the oil price in relation to that going to be?
Well, so there's a long futures market for the price of oil, but really looking at it doesn't really tell us a whole lot because really it's expecting oil prices to kind of stay in this mid-$70 range, which would have a strong implication that diesel prices and gasoline prices would stay steady too. The problem I see, though, is I'm not sure traders really have priced into the oil market the price what may happen in the Russia-Ukraine war because Russia's a humongous exporter of oil here, so they can have a big influence on what happens in the oil market. It doesn't really seem to me that traders really have factored in what could be a worst-case scenario in Russia where maybe they couldn't get any oil out at all. So I think what the price you're seeing with oil is really a best-case scenario with that. I think they're assuming that things are going to keep going like they are. Russia's still going to be able to get oil out. It's not going to affect world prices very much. But that could easily change, in my opinion, and we could see a thing where maybe Russia couldn't get oil out. In that case, I think you could see oil back jump up pretty quickly. When the Russia-Ukraine war first started, we saw oil get up to about $130 per barrel. It's in the mid-70s now here. So I think in a worst-case scenario, you could see oil going back up to, the mid-100s again, possibly, again, as a worst-case scenario. And that would really see a big jump then in the diesel fuel price and the gasoline price.
And another price outlook that you've recently done, fertilizer price outlook for 2024. And for that, what were you looking at?
Well, so at one time I just looked at the corn price and the oil price as a driver of what might happen in the fertilizer market because I looked at the corn price as the demand for what fertilizer might be. Then I looked at the oil price kind of as a supply side because there is some trade-off between natural gas, which is the element you actually use to produce fertilizer, and the oil prices. And that worked really good for a long time. But then about 2 or 3 years ago, it got to the case where my model suddenly just broke and it wasn't working. So I changed my model to include inflation because I think that was kind of the missing element. And then once I added inflation expectations to the model, I got some really good R-squared value. So I was getting, right now I'm currently getting like an R-squared value in the mid 0.70 range, and that's really pretty good for our predicting power. We look at -1 to 1 as being the entire range of what the correlation should be. Well, a correlation of 0.7 is really pretty good. So looking at those three factors, the oil price, the corn price, and the inflation expectation, I think my model out now is actually working pretty well for predicting those prices.
Why is this outlook something that's really important for producers?
Well, if you look at the expenses for farmers, fertilizer is really the second biggest expense category outside machinery. So machinery is by far and away the biggest expense category. A lot of those expenses are fixed expenses. But then when we look at the variable expenses, really fertilizer is the most important one there. Farmers have a lot of money tied up in growing a crop, especially for something like corn or grain sorghum or wheat, where you're putting a lot of nitrogen on your product. So those crops use a lot of fertilizer, and whenever those prices go up, we see a corresponding hit to the farmer's bottom line because that's going to show up as a higher input cost.
And as we're thinking about this, a lot of things impact the fertilizer price besides just inflation and corn and those other things you mentioned.
Well, there is some demand side there too, and what the mix farmers are going to grow. So, when we see the prices for grains, maybe favoring more corn production, then we're going to see a bigger hit to the farmer's bottom line there because they're going to have to apply nitrogen, whereas if they grow soybeans, they won't have to do that. So those are the other factors that go into that, besides just the fact that, what the fertilizer price actually is how much you're going to be using in total.
Is there some international conflict that could also kind of impact what the price may be?
Well, again, looking at the fertilizer price, oil is a big driver there. So whenever we see oil prices go up, we're going to see a corresponding hit on the fertilizer side. So, we had fertilizer prices go up well above $1,000 a ton for anhydrous at one point. They have since backed off quite a bit here. And over the last few months, I think anhydrous now is currently in the mid $800 range or so. Somewhere in there, and that kind of corresponds to what my model says it should be. So really, as long as the oil price stays in the $70 range, I think you'll look at fertilizer prices being pretty steady. Again, a lot of it's going to depend on the inflation side too here. So as long as we have kind of got inflation down to the 3 or 4% range, I think you're looking at, fertilizer in the $800 range is probably pretty realistic here. But again, if something would happen to the oil market and we would see oil prices jump up to above $100, then you're going to see fertilizer prices jump up again pretty high. The same on the inflation side. I think there's some reasonable hope that maybe we kind of got away from this near double-digit inflation, and we got looking at inflation maybe in the 3 to 4% range. Well, that's the case. I think you're looking at pretty steady fertilizer prices. But again, as something would happen to inflation, it would jump back up again, then you're going to see fertilizer prices go up as well.
When it comes to making these diesel or fertilizer purchases, what is important for producers just to keep in mind?
Well, so farmers can buy things ahead of time, and a lot of farmers do have some storage capabilities for buying fertilizer and storing it, and the same with fuel storage as well here. So, farmers can look at my price predictions and look at maybe when they want to consider buying things. If you go back and look at what happened a year ago, a lot of farmers tend to want to buy fertilizer in the fall because they can count that as an expense in the current year, and it can help lower things for tax purposes. Well, a year ago, it was the case where, fertilizer prices went down pretty much all winter, most of the spring. So those farmers who bought fertilizer later in the year and earlier in the spring actually came out ahead over those folks who bought their fertilizer earlier in the year, maybe like a year ago last fall. Well, I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I don't think waiting and buying your fertilizer this spring later is going to really allow you much saving because it looks to me like fertilizer has been rising a good chunk of the winter here. So, but again, looking at my fertilizer outlook, I think fertilizer tends to be steady during the year. I don't really see a whole lot of downside potential though in the fertilizer market just based on where the oil price and the inflation price is here. So I don't really see much fertilizer prices going much lower. I think the risk of things going higher is probably a bigger risk to producers than the benefit of them maybe going lower here. So farmers can take that in consideration when they buy things and when they want to buy their inputs for the coming year. Again, they do have some flexibility, and that can make a big difference to your bottom line, given the fact that fertilizer is your most expensive input category.
And if people do want to find your outlooks, where can they do that?
Well, Ag Manager would have my outlook. I tend to update these things on a regular basis. Probably every 3 or 4 months I will come up with a new outlook. Really, though, my basic model, now that I've added inflation back into it, hasn't changed a whole lot. Some of the factors into it The actual parameters I get vary a little bit, but not a whole lot here. So I think going to Ag Manager and looking at those, finding the most recent version and seeing what my projection is. I try to predict fertilizer out now for the next coming year here, so farmers can look at that and get an idea where they think fertilizer prices would be going for the coming year.
Gregg, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us some price outlooks for 2024.
Okay, well, again, like I said, a pretty steady fertilizer and oil based on what my inputs show. So, yeah, I don't expect any surprises at the moment based on what the futures market is showing.
That was Kansas State University Extension Farm Management Specialist Gregg Ibendahl, and he was discussing his diesel fuel price outlook and fertilizer price outlook, both for 2024. You can find these by going to agmanager.info, or I will also link them in today's show notes on agtoday.net. Just a reminder that he will be updating these throughout the year, so if you'd like to stay up to date on that, you can do that by following along on agmanager.info. I would also like to let you know about an opportunity if you'd like to hear more about the outlooks for fuel and oil prices in 2024 from Gregg Ibendahl. Wednesday, February 21st, so this coming Wednesday from 12 to 1:30 p.m., there's an online Zoom taking place with Antonina Broyaka as she talks about Ukraine agriculture and trade in wartime, results of 2023 and prospects for 2024. And then following that, it is Gregg Ibendahl with an outlook for fuel and oil prices in 2024. You are required to get registered for this, but there is no fee to attend. Once again, I will link that in today's show notes, or you can also find it by going to agmanager.info. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by K-State's Shane Werk and Chris Mullinix as they talk about the upcoming Legacy Sale. We're cutting to that short break now.
You're tuned back into Agriculture Today. We continue our show by discussing K-State's upcoming Legacy Bull and Female Sale. To talk about it, we're joined by K-State Faculty Advisor Chris Mullinix and Shane Werk, Purebred Beef Unit Manager. Gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Chris, I'm going to start off with you. Can you go over some of the history behind the K-State Legacy Sale and maybe some past sale highlights?
Well, the Legacy Sale is very unique to Kansas State University as we look in comparison to many of our land-grant peers across the country. And as we even think back further than that, K-State has a rich history of purebred livestock production, in particular purebred cattle, dating back to the late 1800s. And then in the late 1970s, I think 1977, was K-State's first ever production sale. It started as a rotation breeds. We sold just one breed each year for several years, and eventually evolved into a 3-breed sale in its current format. We sell Angus, Hereford, and Simmental cattle, and has grown from exclusively a bull sale to also a female offering as well. And we primarily target the commercial sector within the region as far as our bulls are concerned. I think by some margin the most unique side of the sale, though, is the involvement of students. And I think that's really what makes it special from an education standpoint. I think it's what makes it unique for our department is the role that our students play first in the bull sale class leading into the sale, and then every piece of the puzzle leading up to sale day, their involvement on sale day and even post-sale. I think it's really unique what they have the opportunity to be involved with. And I think it's important to those students as far as their growth as a student here in the department, but in particular the ones that are taking this class and are part of the sale have a real personal interest, whether that means going back to a family program that has their own production sale, whether they're more in the sales and marketing side of things and ultimately have a goal, of working in seed stock related sales and marketing positions. I think it gives them all a pretty neat insight into what a production sale like this takes.
Shane, what breeds are represented and what are some of the more prevalent sire groups within those respective breeds?
We've had Angus and Hereford since the 1880s, and then we're one of the earlier adopters of Simmental genetics in the very early 70s. So a lot of history with each of those breeds, and that's kind of part of how that name came about, legacy sale, just history in general of the operation in the school, but we have a lot of history within those breeds as well. And so we'll sell bulls, obviously, as the main part of the sale. We do sell a few females. We'll sell some fall-bred females this year, and then we'll sell again groups of commercial heifers. We'll have a group of fall-bred commercial heifers this year, and then some spring opens like we've had in the last 4 or 5 years, which have been well received. As far as sire groups go, we have some of the similar sire groups we've had in a couple of years past. Angus-wise, we have some good GAR hometown sons, a good group of couple iconic sons, a good pair of Barricade sons, Sitz Barricade. Those are all sire groups that we've had in years past and been well received. The Simmental, we've got some sons out of a bull we raised called KSU Bald Eagle that Cattle Vision sells semen on and has gotten some fair amount of use AI across the breed. Those would be some good bulls. It's a really good bull sired by KBHR Bold Ruler. That'd be out of a heifer we sold a couple of years ago that we retained a little interest in, and she brought 20,000 here maybe 3-4 years ago. And the Herefords, we would have a few sired by another bull we raised that again we're selling semen on called KSU Land Grant. It was our record selling bull here a couple of years ago. Got a nice group of those, and then we have some maternal siblings to him as well as some bulls out of full sisters and maternal sisters to him. We got some 18-month and yearlings both. They probably, like a lot of people listening out there can identify with, had a little bit of environmental challenge to deal with here from about Christmas to up until about maybe a week, 10 days ago, but they've made it through and are coming together and starting to look good.
Chris, what separates K-State cattle from other available seed stock in the area?
The biggest selling point to me in this group of bulls is the variety that's there too. And I think that's one thing that Shane's done a spectacular job is increasing quality, across all 3 breeds, by being really selective in the way that he's done things genetically. But I also like the fact that if you're in need of an Angus calving ease sire, we've got them. If you're in need of a bull that needs to put a shot more growth in them, or your primary goal is increasing some carcass merit and endpoint value, those bulls are there. And I think, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and maybe what Shane and I might think is the best bull cataloged may not be the best bull for a given program. And I think that's what really makes this set of bulls, I think, pretty incredible, is the depth and the opportunity that I think different programs may have to really find a bull that suits their needs. I think that's an important thing for us as a breeding program to be able to offer our customer base, is that opportunity that, to come and find 3, 4, 5 bulls that fit a specific need. Where they all have balance and they're not out of bounds in any one particular area, but I think you'll find highlight lots that maybe, can fit a specific need for a producer across all 3 of the breeds.
Chris, what's the most important thing that you'd want new customers to know about KSU cattle?
The best people to answer that question wouldn't even be us. It'd be former customers. And the use that they've gotten out of the seed stock that has come here from K-State and the job that they've done in their programs. And I think they speak for themselves. The other thing that I would tell you, for a new customer is, as an educator myself and appreciating the way that this sale has always been put together, if you're interested, come and let us help you find the bull that you need. Let these students be part of that process for you and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are going to get the best customer service that you'll find. Not just day of the sale, but as you work forward and you put that bull or those females, back into use and you're getting started in your breeding program or you're a new breeder, know that we're just a phone call away when it's time to breed that set of, commercial heifers maybe that you made the decision to buy, or, let us help you to, answer some of those questions if you're new to this and exploring K-State bulls or females as an option.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, a couple of quick things, is just kind of like Chris said. I mean, with the availability and the service, anytime I interact with customers, I try and encourage them to, feel free to reach out to me anytime, One other thing, for somebody to know, we do try and run these cattle in a very similar manner to probably a lot of our customers. These cattle are out grazing for the most part most of the year, and well, we've had to feed them more this year than we typically do, which I'm sure, like I said, lots of people out there have. We try and run them in a as close to commercial conditions as we can. And
when and where is the sale held, Shane?
I'll be at the Stanley Stout Center, which is at 2200 Denison. It'll be March 1 this year. So yeah, it's always held in conjunction with Cattleman's Day here at K-State, which is that day. The program will start in the morning and end there early afternoon down here on campus at K-State, and then we'll have our sale up at the Stout Center, which is adjacent to the purebred unit. It's not quite as easy to get to as it normally is. The intersection at Denison and Kimball they've been working on it and continue to. So getting there the easiest way is to come from the north down south, come from Marlette and come south on Denison down to the Stout Center there towards the fire station.
Chris, where can absentee bidders go to place their bids?
As usual, we will have opportunities online to be able to bid. All of that information is available through Animal Science Purebred Unit Facebook page, so we encourage that. If you can't be here on sale day and you want to make a point to get here and look through the bulls, in those days leading into the sale, we certainly would encourage that if that's something that works for you. One thing that, we should mention on sale day also, those cattle will all be on display leading into the sale just behind the Stanley Stout Center as usual. We encourage you to come and be part of that and, see those bulls firsthand, the females as well. Ask whatever questions you might have in that process. But yes, whether you're there in person or you can't be, we're gonna make it user friendly and give you the opportunity to bid from wherever you may be. Videos for bulls will be up very shortly as well. So again, maybe something that if you can't be there in person, we got still shots obviously that are cataloged, but we will have videos pretty quickly that we'll post to the website as well.
Shane, if anybody's looking for any more information, where should they go?
Feel free to reach out to me. Again, we mentioned all social media for Purebred Unit and the ASI website. My phone number is 785-565-1881. CCI.live will be the website we use for internet. They'll have all the information there as well, and those are your best options. Like Chris said, feel free to anytime here between now and next Friday, pop in, and we'd love to show them to you. And yeah, well, like I say, if you can't be there, we have internet bidding. We do a lot of bidding over the phone for folks too. So, Chris and I do the bulk of that. So yeah, lots of options. But yeah, those are the best places to find it. ASI website has everything, and of course, like I said, social media will have a lot of stuff as we're getting closer here.
That was K-State Purebred Beef Unit Manager Shane Werk, joined by Faculty Advisor Chris Mullinix, talking about the upcoming K-State Legacy Bull and Female Sale. I'm Jacob Klaudt, in for Shelby Varner. We're taking a short break now, but we'll be back with more up ahead.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. We end today's program with this week's milk lines. It's technically still winter, but spring and the beginning of fly season are just around the corner. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk encourages dairy farmers to start preparing now for the inevitable battle with flies, which can impact both the health of the herd and milk production.
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning the upcoming fly season. As temperatures start to rise and we start to enjoy spring weather, we're reminded that the battle with the flies will start fairly soon. It's a age-old battle. We fight it every year. So how did your fly control program work last year? Were you satisfied with it? What do you need to change up this year so that you might be successful? For those of you that incorporate a larvicide into your program, really should start feeding that now if you haven't started. Keep in mind that the fly cycle, as far as a life cycle, basically repeats itself about every 9 to 14 days depending on the ambient temperature. Even during cool weather, the fly population starts to build. And the thing that we're really concerned about early in the fly season are actually the stable flies, which are biting flies. The reason we're so concerned about those is that they do reduce milk production fairly significantly. In some cases, we can see anywhere from a 15 to 30% loss in daily milk production due to these painful pests. Here in the United States, that cost just for losses of milk production due to stable flies is about $360 million per year. So it is a sizable amount, and even on our smaller dairies, we can see significant losses in milk production due to the biting flies. So what are some of the key things that you need to think about as you prepare to do battle with the upcoming fly season? Number one is sanitation, cleaning up things like manure piles that might be left from the wintertime, cleaning up waste feed and keeping it clean, thinking about how you control weeds around your livestock premise. Weeds can be an attraction for flies, especially the stable flies, because they need a place to rest during the night. They leave your barns and come back during the day, and they generally rest in grass that's growing very close to where your dairy facility is at. So controlling weeds and keeping up on mowing is an important part of controlling that cycle as well. Now, in addition to sanitation, you're going to have to think about what you use for control. I know many people use parasites, and they can be very effective. You need to actually put those out on a weekly basis, so that needs to start fairly early in the fly season if you're going to do that, because we do not want the fly population to gain too much strength. As the fly population gains strength, we'll have to use increased numbers of parasites. So during the season, you should have a plan to ramp up the number of parasites that you're actually purchasing each week to keep the fly population in check. Some of the other things that we use to supplement this would be things like premise sprays. Again, if you're using predator-type insects, what you apply to control flies, those chemicals will also have a negative effect on your predators. So if you are using chemicals, predators sometimes are not very effective. Premise sprays are a good thing to apply. It's best to apply those as a fog, and in some cases you need to read the label carefully. Not all products are actually labeled for dairy cows, and in some cases you need to remove those animals from the barns during the time that you spray and for a period of time afterwards. There are also things that we can apply directly to the animals, insecticides that help control the flies as well, and that may be part of your strategy as well. One of the things that you can do in your milk barns to really control the fly population there are various types of traps, and that will help with your workers. One of the things that we notice in milk barns where we have fly issues is that our workers are less efficient. It is a nuisance for the cows, but it's also a nuisance for your employees. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to prepare for the fly season now so that you can effectively battle the flies this summer.
Thanks, Mike. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.